Marianna Spring is the BBC's chief disinformation reporter. Last year, we posted this series of 3 5-minute videos about some deceptive practices often used by the mainstream media to manipulate the narrative. Here we have put them together in one video.
The BBC's Marianna Spring has been in the news again. In a recent BBC interview, reporter James Clayton spoke to Twitter CEO Elon Musk. Clayton suggested that Musk's leadership had led to a surge in online violence on the platform. However, when Musk challenged him for an example, Clayton backtracked, citing a report by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. Here's a 10-second clip of Clayton's remarks.
What I claimed was the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they say that hateful content is on the rise.
Describe a hateful thing.
Something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist.
Clayton was referring to some research that was included in a recent BBC Panorama programme presented by the BBC's disinformation expert, Marianna Spring. She included an interview with someone from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue who had been specially commissioned by the BBC to look for evidence to support the programme's claim that there was a link between Musk's involvement with Twitter and an increase in misogyny. However, the main conclusion of the report was that while Twitter had seen a significant increase in the number of new accounts being created, misogynistic agendas or ideologies were not a dominant narrative. But Marianna was undaunted, so this is how she framed the narrative in the final cut of the program.
New research shared with Panorama shows there's been a spike in the appetite for harmful material.
We saw huge spikes of account creation around several notable events during Elon Musk's Twitter takeover.
The report categorically does not at any point describe a spike in the appetite for harmful material.
There's been a spike in the appetite for harmful material.
Rather, it said there had been a spike in new account creation following Elon Musk's involvement.
We saw huge spikes of account creation around several notable events during Elon Musk's Twitter takeover.
The spikes in new account creation were shown in a graph in the full report from the Institute, using a convoluted metric to depict, quote, the daily number of new accounts created, which subsequently went on to follow 132 existing accounts specifically selected by the researchers. The first 2 spikes occurred in April and October 2022 when Musk announced his interest in acquiring Twitter and when he finally took over. The third and fourth spikes were, as it turned out, an unexpected gift from the gods of clickbait.
We saw huge spikes of account creation around several notable events during Elon Musk's Twitter takeover, but also related to the known online misogynistic influencer Andrew Tate. When comparing the period before Musk's takeover and after, we see a 69% increase in the overall level of account creation.
The rises in new account creation occurred when Musk allowed Andrew Tate back on Twitter in November 2022 and then, when Tate was arrested in December. Their analysis showed that the new account holders who joined Twitter to follow Tate didn't exhibit significant misogyny, but, rather, dominant discussion themes included support for freedom of speech, opposition to liberal or woke views, some conspiracist content, and support for Trump and MAGA republicanism. The Institute issued a press release to correct Clayton's misinformed statement and Marianna's misrepresentation of their findings. There is a link to the Institute's rebuttal below, and we ask viewers to read the full context of their criticisms of Clayton, Spring and BBC journalism. In response to Clayton's statement they say,
to be clear, slightly racist or slightly sexist content, as it was defined by the BBC reporter in his interview with Musk, is not hate speech.
They go on to suggest that instead of seeking slightly sexist or misogynistic tweets, Marianna would do well to report on more weighty topics revealed in their research. The Institute identified a surge in Islamic State accounts in the days following Musk's takeover, a 69% increase in just the first 12 days. At the same time, without implying a correlation, they report a doubling of anti-Semitic hate speech. We can't help but wonder if Marianna's handlers would let her make a Panorama program about the amount of Islamic hate to be found on Twitter. Our last video exposed Marianna Spring's determination to find misogyny everywhere she looked on Twitter. And we showed how she had misrepresented a report by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue in a recent BBC Panorama program. This next video shows how in the same program, she shamelessly exaggerates the number of hate tweets she personally receives. Marianna's next port of call looks like it might be promising. The International Center for Journalists told us in an earlier report that online violence against women journalists is frequently associated with populist politics and polarizing political debates such as Brexit. Let's watch the 90-second clip that made it to the Panorama program.
Julie Passetti from the International Center for Journalists has been analysing the messages directed at me.
We can see in April 2021 a massive spike in abuse against you, which was connected to your reporting on COVID-19 disinformation. Then we see in January 2022 a real reduction in the abuse that you're experiencing. We can directly compare the second period with the third period. We're looking at the same time frame a year later. And so here we can see in 2023 that you are starting to experience an escalation in the obvious abuse that is being detected. In fact, specifically after Elon Musk took over, the online violence directed at you, picked up by our tools, has more than tripled.
The graph we have been looking at charts the number of what they call abusive tweets per day, and this is a screen grab of the first spike she spoke about.
We can see in April 2021 a massive spike in abuse against you, which was connected to your reporting on COVID-19 disinformation.
Our graphics team have made this compilation of the screenshots created by the International Center for Journalists for Marianna's Panorama program, which Marianna is using to give weight to her hyperbolic claim that there has been a massive growth in misogyny against her since Musk took over Twitter. An earlier report by the Institute identifies the day when this first spike occurred as the 24th of April 2021, when there were anti-lockdown protests in London, about which Marianna had tweeted.
Anti-lockdown protesters, predominantly organized in Telegram channels promoting conspiracy theories about vaccines and the pandemic, are marching in central London. There are placards claiming, "The experimental vaccine kills."
It's hard to know how disingenuous her surprise was when, the next day she tweeted,
After reporting firsthand on online conspiracy theories about COVID being promoted at protests, I have been bombarded with horrific abuse and threats.
We can see in April 2021 a massive spike in abuse against you, which was connected to your reporting on COVID-19 disinformation.
Attentive viewers will have noticed that the massive spike claimed in the program represents a grand total of 20 tweets, which were posted in response to Marianna's dismissive insinuations about the protesters. Moving on with Panorama's narrative.
Then we see in January 2022 a real reduction in the abuse that you're experiencing.
As our screen grab technology reveals, we can now easily see that the Institute have highlighted one day in January 2022, when Marianna was subjected to 4 mean tweets.
We can directly compare January 2022 with the same time frame a year later. And so here we can see in 2023 that you are starting to experience an escalation in the obvious abuse that is being detected. In fact, specifically after Elon Musk took over, the online violence directed at you, picked up by our tools, has more than tripled.
There were 7 cases of what are described as online violence towards Marianna when Musk took over on October 27, which rose to a peak of 22 cases on January 11, 2023. I'm sure we are all wondering what could have possibly happened on January 11th to cause Marianna to be bombarded with those 22 tweets.
I was absolutely bombarded.
So, come back with us to January 2023.
Marianna Spring, BBC's disinformation and social media correspondent. January 11th. Today I covered 2 Andrews. Influencer Andrew Tate, whose content sparks fears about teens being exposed to misogynistic videos, is detained in Romania. And MP Andrew Bridgen, who has promoted anti-vax ideas, is suspended after comparing vaccines to the Holocaust.
And he himself has said he's a misogynist, pushing quite worrying ideas. So it was these comments he shared online comparing the Holocaust with vaccines that sparked widespread condemnation.
Marianna Spring, thank you.
So, it seems that there are very few people following Marianna, if only 22 people could be bothered to send abusive tweets calling out her misinformation about Tate, and her misrepresentation of Bridgen's views. Our next video shows how the BBC mocked up a fake tweet to help Marianna misrepresent Elon Musk after the Panorama program was aired. Our previous two videos exposed examples of disinformation being spread by the BBC's Marianna Spring in a Panorama program. This third video shows Marianna bravely exposing her personal story of victimhood. The Panorama program was aired without much interest or comment, but, in line with their editorial decision to pursue an anti-Musk narrative, the BBC made this follow-up program.
The recent Panorama investigation I did looked at Twitter, the social media platform, and what's happened since Elon Musk took over at the end of last year. When I first saw that Elon Musk had tweeted me, it was quite early over here, and I had so many messages, and I thought, oh wow, what's happened? Rothful LMAO. I'm not ever quite sure how you meant to say that aloud, which means rolling on the floor, laughing my ass off. I sort of thought for a moment, oh, hang on a second. I've asked this man for an interview so many times, it feels like, and this is the first I hear? I've asked this man for an interview so many times, it feels like, and this is the first I hear?
Marianna seems to be very put out that the person she dismissively calls this man doesn't seem to realize that she is from the BBC.
I've asked this man for an interview so many times, it feels like, and this is the first I hear?
Our researchers have found that Marianna sent just one open tweet in January to Musk, while she was in San Francisco filming some content for Panorama.
17th of January, 2023. I'm making a documentary for BBC Panorama about Twitter, and would love to interview you. At Elon Musk. What do you say?
So many times, it feels like.
Additionally, in line with BBC guidelines.
My experience so far of doing these investigations is that you send off a letter to the social media companies, you lay out what your investigation reveals, you give them the chance to respond. I've never had any emails back from Twitter. Rothful LMAO. I'm not ever quite sure how you meant to say that aloud, which means rolling on the floor, laughing my ass off. I sort of thought for a moment, oh, hang on a second. There are issues like child sexual exploitation, there are issues like state-sponsored disinformation, but that was the reply. I kind of couldn't quite believe that was his response.
Well, that tweet most certainly wasn't his response. It was never directed to Marianna. It was never sent in the context of laughing at child sexual exploitation.
There are issues like child sexual exploitation. I couldn't quite believe that rolling on the floor, laughing my ass off was his response.
And, worse, as we'll see, this screen grab has been photoshopped by the BBC to suggest that it was sent as a reply to at BBC World. And, further, to give the false impression that it appeared in the timeline of that particular thread. Here is the story behind that tweet, and the BBC's deception in not explaining the quite different context and circumstances in which it was sent. In the early hours of March the 6th, BBC World posted this tweet, which was a teaser for Marianna's Panorama program, scheduled to be aired that evening.
BBC World. March 6, 2023. 1:18 a.m. Twitter can't protect you from trolls anymore, insiders say.
Soon after, Billy Marcus, who is a friend of Musk, and the founder of the cryptocurrency Dogecoin, posted this sarcastic comment in response to the BBC teaser.
4:57 a.m. Before Elon, I never had anyone say anything mean to me ever. It was a beautiful utopia. Now I fear for my life daily.
A couple of hours later, that tweet came up in Musk's feed and he replied to his friend.
7:27 a.m. Elon Musk. Literally ROFLMAO.
Here is the original tweet, and this is the Photoshop version used by the BBC. It is doubtful that Elon Musk has heard of Marianna Spring. And it speaks to a distorted sense of self-importance that the BBC disinformation department would want to mock up a document to suggest that he ever did. It is evident that Elon Musk posted the reply to his friend a full 12 hours before the program was broadcast, and it is a scurrilous BBC deception to suggest that he finds child abuse amusing. This is the compilation of Marianna's journalism, which made these claims as part of the narrative denigrating Elon Musk in the program.
When I first saw that Elon Musk had tweeted me, it was quite early over here. There are issues like child sexual exploitation, but that was the reply. I kind of couldn't quite believe that that was his response, rolling on the floor, laughing my ass off.
She went on to suggest that Musk's fake tweet had incited hate against her.
It wasn't very fun being tweeted by Elon Musk, in so much as I was absolutely bombarded with hate, some of the worst hate I've ever had, and I deal with quite a lot of hate because of the topic I cover, but a real deluge.
That is how the sequence was presented during the broadcast. Our graphics department have been able to use modern technology to replay Marianna's examples, and has added captions to reveal the highlighted words.
I was absolutely bombarded with hate, some of the worst hate I've ever had.
A woman child, not a journalist. Why has the BBC downgraded Marianna from expert to correspondent? It's clear she is fit to be neither. If you want a role model to look up to, don't pick Marianna. Brutal stuff.
I was absolutely bombarded with hate.
As our video number 14 showed, the International Center for Journalism used their analytic tools to identify the grand total of 22 examples of what they call online violence directed towards Marianna.
Specifically, after Elon Musk took over, the online violence directed at you, picked up by our tools, has more than tripled. Specifically, after Elon Musk took over, the online violence directed at you, picked up by our tools, has more than tripled.
I was absolutely bombarded with hate.
Since Elon Musk has been in touch, what about your own personal experience on Twitter?
I've had death threats, scary stuff I don't like. There are people who've said that they want me to die in the most horrible way possible.
We're beginning to think she may be reliving her own fever dream here. As we saw, Elon Musk has never contacted her, and there is little evidence of what Marianna initially called death threats but quickly retreated to claiming.
They want me to die in the most horrible way possible.
If viewers are still with us, let's rerun the abridged version of Marianna's main theme and then compare it with another famous BBC interview.
It wasn't very fun being tweeted by Elon Musk, in so much as since Elon Musk has tweeted me, I was absolutely bombarded with death threats, hate, some of the worst hate I've ever had, and the army of trolls that have been in touch. And I deal with quite a lot of hate because of the topic I cover, but a real deluge.
When women speak out against you online, disagree with what you say, they describe being bombarded with rape threats, with death threats, trolling by your followers. Would you like to say anything to your followers about how to behave in that situation?
Absolutely.